The last big piece here as we start chapter 11, or as we finish chapter 11, that we want to take a look at is the origins of the Holocaust. And I know we're all familiar with images of the Holocaust, things that we've seen before, where we're looking at images, that are catastrophic in their description, things that defy imagination, the kind of stuff that you see in horror movies. But we want to spend this lesson not so much talking about the actual Holocaust itself. I mean, we know the nuts and bolts of that, but we want to investigate whether or not this could have been prevented. I mean, could the kinds of tragedies that we're so used to seeing in these movies, even in the books that we read, whether it's Night or whether it is The Boy in the Striped Pajamas or Schindler's List or something else, could we have prevented that? And so we want to take a look here in this last lesson at the Nazi persecution of the Jews, and we want to try and answer some of these essential questions in terms of why do some people respond to injustice and why others don't. I mean, why do some people want to stop this kind of thing from happening, and why others not care? So we've got a couple of things we're going to take a look at here throughout the course of this this lesson to help us kind of understand why it is that some people really are upset about the Holocaust, and while others allow it to happen. So let's see kind of what our background is here and how we can put this together. The first thing that we need to recognize here is that, yes, the Holocaust does kill 6 million Jews, but that's not the only group of people that are targeted. There are gypsies, there are the disabled, there are people who are from Eastern Europe, whether you're just not German, you're not Aryan. Christians who even oppose Hitler are put into concentration camps and later liquidated. But what I need you to understand for the purpose of this is that even though we have all these other groups that are definitely persecuted, all these other groups that definitely are killed, the Nazi hatred, pure loathing of the Jew is beyond the kind of common anti-Semitism that we see in Europe. Hatred of the Jew. We're going way beyond what we've traditionally seen before. And I think that's one reason why, when it comes to the Jewish people themselves, why some are unable to see this pattern happening, why they don't suspect that the Holocaust is coming. In more detail, the first inkling, aside from the regular kind of anti-Semitism that the Nazi Party promotes, that things might be a little bit different, are the Nuremberg laws. These are laws that, in their broadest sense, take away citizenship from German Jews. But it does a bunch of other things as well. You can't marry if you are a Jew and a non-Jew. You can't hold public office. You can't vote. Essentially, what we're saying here is that you go to bed the night before these laws take place, a German citizen, able to do all of these things. You wake up the next day, and you're not German anymore. At least not legally. Your name is forcefully changed if it doesn't sound Jewish enough. Your passport is marked with a J to show that you're Jewish. Within 3 years, most of the jobs that Jews can hold have been limited, half of them out of work. Because these laws, the Nuremberg laws, clearly denote who is a Jew and who isn't. This particular chart we'll take a look at in class in a little more detail. I just want you to take a look at it now and see if you can figure out, what does it show you? This is a graphic organizer of the Nuremberg laws. This is a way to think of the Nuremberg laws visually. So take a look at this here, and then we'll talk more about it in class. But I just wanted you to get a feel for what it is that you're looking at here. Okay? So, Jews stay in Germany, even with these Nuremberg laws that do all kinds of things that kind of ban your citizenship and deny you jobs, things like that. So why? Well, because they're German, right? Just because you go to bed and you wake up the next day and you're legally not a German citizen anymore doesn't mean you're somehow less German. It's like me going to bed and waking up and someone saying, "Hey, you're not American." But yeah, I am, right? I mean, I was born here. I was raised here. I'm American in my culture, in my mind, in my heart. I'm American. I'm no less American just because you change a law. And look, these Nuremberg laws, that's a long way from like here where we're saying, okay, like we're definitely prejudiced against you in the jobs you can hold, and we're going to punish you and take away your citizenship. And over here, which is, like the Holocaust, it's destruction, it's death, it's genocide. It's a long way between those two things, right? I mean, it's a big gap. And it's not like Jews hadn't seen this kind of thing before. This map that I have right here is interesting because what this shows you are the cities and the countries that have expelled Jewish people long before the Holocaust. This map just takes a look at 1100 to 1800 AD. It doesn't even deal with the 1900s. Any city that has a triangle marked on it has a substantial Jewish population. So you can see there, I mean, there are Jewish people all over Europe, right? The ones with the circles have purposefully expelled Jews. Do you remember all the way back? I think it was like chapter 4. We talked about that immigrant Alfred. We read his story. He was amazed by the Woolworth Tower and the subway. Do you remember him saying there was a pogrom in his village, in his city in Russia? This is what we were talking about, where for hundreds of years the Jews were not welcome in Europe, and that when times were bad, they were targeted, and they were kicked out of their cities and towns. So if you're Jewish, and your ancestors have been kicked out of Poland and Russia and Germany and France and Italy and Spain and Great Britain and Belgium and the Netherlands and Romania and Hungary, and all of a sudden the Germans come along, and you can see, right, just how many happened in this area of Germany, quite a lot. And all of a sudden the Nazis show up and they're doing the same thing. Well, haven't you seen this play before? And it always kind of works out. It's not great. It's bad. But it's not Holocaust bad. So there's lots of reasons why Jews stay. And let's take a look here at how we go from this to the actual Holocaust then. And I think we can find our answer as to how we go from the pogroms and the Nuremberg laws and the denial of jobs and citizenship to the Holocaust by looking at something called Kristallnacht. Because not all Jews just accept this. There are lots of Jews out there who refuse to accept this kind of treatment. One of them is this guy up here. His name is Herschel Grinspan. He's a Polish Jew. His family had been mistreated in Poland, kicked out of Germany by the Nazis, and he sought revenge. So he goes to the German embassy in Paris, France, where he was an illegal immigrant. And he walks in, and he requests to see a German official, a guy named von Roth. And he shoots him, kills him, assassinates him as retribution for the terrible treatment of the Jews by the Nazis. And this is more than Hitler and the Nazis can bear. But it's also a really convenient excuse. It's like saying, I've been telling you over and over and over and over and over again that the Jews cannot be trusted, that they are conniving, that they are sneaky, that they are plotting, that they are planning, that they are coming after us. And now they are. Herschel Grinspan, all the proof in the world we need, right there in front of us on your screen. We need to do something about those Jews. And that's what Hitler says. He responds viciously. He orders the Gestapo and his propaganda minister, Joseph Goebbels, to launch attacks all over Germany. It's called the Night of Broken Glass, or Kristallnacht. All the glass that was broken and littered on the sidewalk. They destroy Jewish stores and synagogues. They deny insurance payments to all the Jews who had their property and their homes and their businesses damaged. 30,000 of them arrested, money confiscated, 90 Jews killed in the riots that break out, thousands more terrorized and driven to fear. And this widespread violence that happens literally in one night, completely organized, convinces many German Jews that something is different this time. Something is going to change this time. What we see here now, from 1938 on, with Kristallnacht and what comes after, is truly something new and different. Because when Jews do resist this now, like Herschel Grisbin did, they've been met with overwhelming force. So now it's time for many German Jews to realize that no one's coming to their aid. People are allowing this injustice to happen. It's time to get out. It's time to leave. It's time to run. So hundreds of thousands of Jews will try to flee. They will attempt to get out. And many are attempting to come here. If you want to come here, you need something called a visa. It's a document necessary to travel legally from one country to another. Remember, we had laws now, like the National Origins Act, the Emergency Quota Act. So we have rules about who can and who can't come here. 250,000 Jews do escape Germany, but it's not an easy road. Most German Jews who apply for a visa to come to the United States or any place else, they don't successfully get out. Here's a map that shows you what I'm talking about. Of the millions of Jews that live in Europe and in Germany, 250,000 of them, people are, again, as we said, definitely fleeing. You can see almost 20,000 flee to Shanghai, 90,000 flee to the United States, 21,000 to Cuba, or 2,000 to Cuba, 21,000 to other Latin American countries in Central America, many others to South America, 66,000 to Palestine, which will later become Israel, and so many others, tens of thousands of them, flee to France and Switzerland and Belgium and the Netherlands. Of course, those Jews will be captured again, won't they? As the Nazis take over Germany and the rest of Europe. So even some of those Jews that are able to escape Germany between 1933, when the Nazis take power, and 1940, when Germans begin large-scale destruction of the Jewish people, many are not able to escape. In part because of our quotas, many German Jews will try to flee with false visas. They will create these false documents, false paperwork to try and escape. And if that happens, they're caught and returned. In fact, the nations of the world held 2 conferences in the 1930s and 40s to talk about the Jewish question. What do we do with all of these Jewish refugees? And they refused to take any more. And we said, sorry, the United States isn't taking any more. You get to stay in Germany. But wait, there's a Holocaust coming. Shouldn't we let them in? Nativism. Remember nativism? We don't want them here. They can suffer someplace else. So these U.S. immigration laws prevent all kinds of people from coming here, like the poor. Nazi laws prevent the Jews from taking out money so that they are forced to be Paul. And U.S. law makes no exemptions for refugees, so they're forced to stay there. And as a result, Germany will still have tremendously large numbers of German Jews that it has to figure out what to do with. In fact, this is interesting. Hitler even offered to pay the cost of transportation for the Jews from Germany to some other place, if the place would only be willing to take them. But they weren't. So then what will Germany do with these people that it loathes, that it detests? And the answer to that question comes in the form of experimentation. The Nazis had established concentration camps. Remember, these are not new. We had talked about concentration camps as far back as the 1898 invasion and Spanish-American War, with the reconcentration camps of the Spanish and the rebels. We talked about it again with the Soviets, who had established concentration camps as well. So the Nazis have had concentration camps, mostly for political prisoners, as early as the 1930s, and you can see it right up here, 1933, to jail political opponents, their enemies, places like Buchenwald, one of the largest ever made in 1937. But it begins to change the purpose of these concentration camps. It says, okay, so while we start with political prisoners, now we have this large population of German Jews that we need to get rid of. So let's put them to work. Let's turn them into slave labor. So, for example, at concentration camps, you were not killed. You were put to work, and you worked to death. The thing that most of us consider with the gas chambers and the cremations, that happens after the fact. In the beginning, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, you're put into a concentration camp and you're worked to death, like the 200,000 Jews that work 12-hour shifts in Buchenwald as slave labor in factories. You're simply not fed. You're not given medical treatment. You work until you die. But what Nazi leaders recognize is that this isn't killing Jews fast enough. We need a more efficient way to kill them. They're living longer than we need them to. We can't get rid of them fast enough. So they held a conference at a place called Wannsee. It's a small little lake outside Berlin. And they discussed there what's called the final solution of the Jewish question. And they discuss all of the many ways that they've executed Jews so far. They've done them by gunshot, but that's very difficult, right? Because that's hard on the mind. I mean, how many little babies and women can you shoot, even if you think they're animals, that they're less than human? How many of those people can you kill before it begins to mess with your mind, right? So it's just not efficient. Not to mention those soldiers could be better used in the battlefield. Bullets are bullets. Why not shoot the enemy? They try suffocating them with exhaust coming out of the back of cars, but you just can't kill them fast enough. And the screams, the loud screams in the back of trucks, it's just it takes too long, and people know what's happening, and it's just hard to manage. And it's not efficient. So what they end up deciding to do is they say, well, we've got all these concentration camps out there like Buchenwald or Auschwitz. So why don't we build a second camp onto the existing camps? An extermination camp. And what we'll do is, when the trains come in, the men can get off that we need at the concentration camp. We'll work them to death. They'll replace the ones that are dying, and everyone else will send to the extermination camp just up the rail line, right next door. Most of these are built in Poland. Treblinka is a famous one. Auschwitz, Birkenau is another. You see, Auschwitz is the concentration camp. Birkenau is the one that we think of with the gas chambers and everything else. So for example, this is Birkenau. This is the camp that's built just up the rail line from Auschwitz. This is the camp that has blocks for families that need to be gassed. Men's camp, gypsy camp, women's camp, an expansion camp that was being built because they couldn't kill them fast enough. And what happens is you come up here and you get off the rail line, and you are divided right here, right on the platform, right as you get off. You're divided. If you're a man, you'll head off into the men's camp, the gypsy camp, the family camp, and if you're lucky, you'll be put to work in Auschwitz. The women, little children that aren't needed, for whatever reason, you're brought to the bathhouses, to the showers, to the gas chambers, immediately, where you're then cremated. There's no delay. It still exists, by the way, Birkenau. This is it right here, Google imaging. And you can see the overlay, just how true to form it still remains. This is the section right down here that you're looking at, down below. So what happens here is that elderly, disabled, mentally handicapped, physically handicapped, sick mothers, kids, most of them almost immediately sent to the gas chambers and killed 2,000 at a time, 12,000 a day, 1.3 million in Auschwitz-Birkenau alone. It's incredibly efficient. But why would Germans let this happen? Why don't they stop this? Right? I mean, sure, Hitler's to blame, but who else is to blame? Is the train driver to blame? The guy who rolls the train in? Who doesn't refuse? What about the guards? They don't actually kill the Jews, but they guard them. What about people that profit from the factories these Jews work in? Who's guilty? Is there a difference between guilt and responsibility? Maybe these people are responsible but not guilty? We're going to take a look at that in more detail tomorrow, but we need to still think as why Germans would let this happen. Was it because they feared? Was it because they feared Hitler? Did they believe him that Germans caused this terrible economic distress and defeat? Is that why? Was it because they wanted someone to point the finger at for their economic troubles in the 1930s? Was it the Gestapo? Was it just this history of anti-Semitism that we talked about on the first slide? Historians are torn. There's no real answer. So we do our best to figure it out now. We look back and we imagine it's kind of a mixture of all these things. And that at its heart, it's still evil. And we'll talk more about this in class tomorrow.